Chapter 17. Moving on. That weekend, I met Devin for the first time at a restaurant near the hotel he was staying at. He was nice, he made me laugh, and he asked me all about my son, which gave him mega cool points in my book. I gave him a few minutes to talk about himself, and I found out that he grew up in the UK and had just moved to Texas 6 months ago. Devin was 28 years old, but due to a strict diet and even stricter workout regimen, he carried a boyish youth in his face. He was very tall, at least 6'2", I guessed. Devin's creamy, caramel-colored skin and hypnotizing blue-green eyes were evidence of his mixed heritage. He had an Afro-Caribbean mother and a white British father. He had quaint, lineless features, with both ethnicities blending absolutely seamlessly together. Although his piercing eyes made it nearly impossible to look away, his big smile was what caught my initial attention. His jet black hair was kept short with deep waves on top, and he had a thick mustache that connected a thin-lined beard. From what I could tell with his clothes on, his whole body was extremely muscular. His accent made me melt, and I loved the way he described things. Devin and I hit it off right away, and I felt the chemistry between us instantly. He was goofy, and made me feel young again. Well, at least my age. For far too long, I felt older than I actually was, and was happy about the fact that he was a playful man. Within days of our initial meeting, Devin called to let me know that he'd decided to take the manager position at the new location in my city. His new apartment ended up being right down the street from my house. We casually dated for weeks. I also saw Randy from time to time since I was still single. I spent days debating on whether or not pursuing a relationship was going to be a good or bad thing. I really just wanted to have fun, with no strings attached, so I continued seeing both men as friends. As the weeks went by, juggling two guys started to become a hassle. I had that innocent childhood connection with Randy, but oh my God, was Devin hot. I thought about what would happen if they found out I was dating them both, and I didn't want to run the risk of losing both of them. I sat down at my desk with a notebook and made a pros and cons list for Devin and Randy. Devin did just move to Florida, even though it wasn't necessarily for me, so I took that into consideration. It would be nice to start off with a clean slate. New places, new experiences. Randy, on the other hand, had a deeper, longer connection with me, but I just knew that his occupation would become an issue in the long run. After a couple flutes of red wine and deep evaluation, I ended up choosing a fresh start, with Devin. It was late and I was a little tipsy, but I called him anyway and invited him over to talk. Needless to say, we ended that conversation in my bedroom. A few days later, I picked up my phone to call Randy, but conveniently enough for me, he'd just left on a work trip. I knew deep down that I wouldn't be able to avoid the conversation until he got back. So I sent him a text, breaking it off. I know I could have handled it better, but I just didn't like confrontation, of any kind. Randy gave up after a few days of no response and never reached out to me again when he got back. Once I knew things were finally getting serious with Devin, I introduced him to Major. Devin was great with kids and was exceptionally sweet and patient with Major, which is rare to find in a man who didn't have kids of their own. Major just started walking, so I'd take him to the zoo often, to tire him out. Devin would tag along too, whenever he could. Major loved the animals, so we ended up throwing his first birthday party at the water park right there at the zoo. The idea of having a man for Major to look up to resonated well with me, and I didn't mind spending some of my time with Devin either. He was funny and told me silly jokes all the time. We were always laughing and goofing off together. I always had fun with him, but found myself needing an equal amount of space. Major was number one in my life, and Devin understood. Devin wouldn't ask to come over every day and crowd me, but he would randomly send flowers to my job. It always put a smile on my face, especially during a stressful day. Devin was terrible in the kitchen, so he always opted to eat out. He damn sure wasn't Joey. He wasn't anything like Joey, but he was still great in his own way. Josiah Hunter was the greatest gift and the most wretched curse. He made me so strong and left me so well off that it gave very little room for someone to bring in that wow factor. My relationship with Devin was originally for companionship and sex. The only two things Joey couldn't provide me in death, but it grew to more over time. I knew I'd never let myself be happy with another man if I used Joey as a mold of comparison. No one would ever measure up to Joey. The way we felt about each other and the way we connected was otherworldly. I knew I'd never have that with any other man. Ever again. Joey died far too young. I secretly wished that I would have met Joey later in life, when I was older and could have appreciated him so much more. I was young and immature, but that kind of love was the purest in its form. I wouldn't take back a single second of having him in my life, even though it was only for a few short years. If I had to relive the worst day of my life every day for 1,000 years just to have one more hour with him, I would have done so without a second thought. I knew somewhere deep down that I would never stop loving Joey, but I eventually convinced myself that it was okay to care for someone else too. It was time to move on. Devin called one morning to let me know that he made dinner reservations in honor of our 3-month anniversary. When we hung up, I immediately called Hannah to see if she'd be willing to hold down the fort while I went out to celebrate with my man. She asked if she could come over early and help me get dressed for my date, but I knew she was just being nosy. I hadn't told her or my mother very much about Devin, and I didn't share any pictures of us together on social media. She only agreed so that she could meet him in person. She pulled into her spot in my driveway, and when I opened the door, she screamed,
"Oh my God, you cut your hair!"
"Yeah, I did. A lot of it," I announced, still unsure how I felt about it.
"How much did you cut?"
she asked, running her fingers through it. 24 inches.
"Haley Nicole, you look amazing. I see that you straightened it, too."
Yeah. When the lady cut it, the curls bounced up above my shoulders. When it's straight, it looks way longer, I explained, fixing my hair back the way it was before she started touching it.
"Did you color it, too?"
Yes, it was just an all-over color. I wanted to get rid of the natural summer highlights and start over.
"Well, you look hot, girlfriend."
Hannah brought over a few of her dresses and some accessories, but I ended up choosing a short yellow long-sleeve dress from my own closet. It wasn't a total loss. I let her pick the accessories.
"I feel like I forgot something at home. Oh well, it'll come to me. Don't you have a yellow flowery ring?"
Hannah asked. "No, I don't think so."
"The one you wore to your 8th grade dance,"
she said as she ransacked my drawers. "Oh my gosh, Banana, how do you remember that?" "It was years ago."
"I remember because that was the first time I ever saw you in a dress. You remember? You went with Jane's little brother, Patrick?"
"Yes, Patrick, how could I forget? He kept trying to feel me up every dance." Hannah opened my jewelry box and pulled everything out to find that damn sunflower ring. When I walked over, she was putting items back in, and I saw my wedding ring for the first time in over a year. It was a plain yellow gold band that held a single teardrop-shaped diamond. It was simple, yet elegant. It was still as beautiful as it was the first time I saw it. After months of sitting in the drawer, it still sparkled in the sunlight that was coming through the window. I must have zoned out for a moment because I heard Hannah snap her fingers repeatedly.
"Earth to Haley. Come in, Haley."
"My bad," I said, shaking my head.
"You all right?"
she asked, putting her hand on my arm. I'm fine. Hannah turned around and walked towards my bed when she heard her phone start ringing.
"It's Mom,"
she mouthed quietly before she answered.
"Hey, Mom, no, I'm at Haley's house. I'm babysitting tonight while she goes on a date."
I picked up a shoe off the floor and launched it at her head. It missed and struck the wall behind her. When she looked at me, I was shaking my head and mouthing for her to not tell our mother.
"Too late,"
she said, putting her hand over the speaker part.
"No, I don't know. What's his last name? Haley?"
I shook my head no, and she told our mom that she'd call her back. "What did you do that for? Now she's going to be blowing me up all night," I was saying as my phone started ringing. "See, case in point," I said, flipping over my cell and ignoring the call.
"She's your mom. What do you expect?"
"I expect for my private life to be kept private, Hannah." I beamed at her.